I grew up in a house where love was measured in trophies and tax returns. If you ask my parents, they'll swear they loved us equally, but anyone who's ever licked a wooden spoon knows when the batter's already been allocated. George, 3-2 older, varsity everything, now corporate, was the first slice. I was the crumbs on the counter, the one they called creative, the way people say interesting, at a bad haircut. Baking was the one place the scoreboard didn't matter. My first souffle collapsed like a tent in a thunderstorm, and Mom laughed, and I laughed too, and then I tried again. I burned my way through bag after bag of flour like it was teenage rebellion. By 19, I had a spiral notebook full of disasters and one near-perfect brioche recipe, stained with butter fingerprints like a family tree. I washed dishes at Sonny's Diner, stacked cash tips in a box, and traded shifts to trail any baker who'd let me shadow. I learned to laminate by hand from Mrs. Alvarez, who could fold butter like origami. I learned how steam makes blistered crust from a retired submarine cook who swore by chains and lava rocks. I named the bakery Crumb and Carrie on a dare. My legal name is James, but only creditors and my father use it. Everyone else calls me Jackety. Nicknames stick better than icing. The lease for a corner unit fell into my lap the way luck does when you've been sweeping in silence for years. The previous tenant sold me a vintage Hobart mixer for the price of a used bike, and I cried in the delivery bay like an idiot because it felt like someone finally handed me the keys to my own brain. Opening day was a calendar square ringed in highlighter. I sent my family a group text with a photo of the sign lit at dusk, gold letters, warm bulbs, a kind of soft promise. My mother heart reacted. George replied, "Proud of you, kid," which I read 3 times for hidden barbs before deciding to accept it as is. Dad left it on read. He always has a way of suggesting he's already seen better. The week before we opened, weird things started happening, like the universe throwing pop quizzes. A raccoon broke into the flour bins. I didn't even know raccoons liked carbs, and I had to toss 50 pounds and start over. The new deck oven arrived with a cracked sight glass we hadn't ordered. The delivery guy swore it left the warehouse perfect. At 2 a.m., a woman with silver hair knocked on the locked door, eyes wild, saying she could hear the yeast breathing, and would I sell her a loaf before it forgets itself. 2 nights before the grand opening, Dad called. His voice had that lemony tone he saves for teachable moments. He told me George had landed a promotion, regional director, bigger bonus, bigger suits, and the family was planning a dinner the same Saturday as my launch. "We'll swing by your hobby shop after dessert," he said, not even pretending to check the time. "Also, Jack, listen, why don't we let George handle the finances for your place? He's experienced. It'll make your mother feel better. Here's the thing about being the youngest. You learn to swallow fast." I said, "We'll talk," because arguing with my father is like whisking egg whites in a thunderstorm. You can do everything right, and it still won't hold. That night, I dreamed of ovens that refused to heat and a doorbell that wouldn't stop. When I woke, there was a real knock. A courier, out of breath, handed me a plain envelope. No return address, just my legal name, James, in block letters. Inside was a photocopy of a magazine mock-up, local table, with a feature titled The Night Bakers of Brookway. The photo was me, flour on my jaw, caught mid-laugh, taken weeks earlier when a student journalist had wandered in for a midnight coffee. If he pulls it off, the caption read, "Crumb and Carrie might just be the kind of place that rearranges a street's heartbeat." I taped it to the wall by the clock, right where I could see it when the doubts came back for seconds. Then I set the starter, fed the dough, and made a promise, to myself, not to the group chat. I would open on Saturday at 7 a.m., with or without a single familiar face. The morning of the opening felt like Christmas had finally shown up for the kid no one remembered to buy presents for. I was at the bakery by 4 a.m., oven humming, racks already lined with golden baguettes and croissants so flaky they sounded like paper when I moved them. The smell was unreal: warm butter, caramelized sugar, toasted almonds. It wasn't just food. It was proof of years I hadn't wasted. I'd scrubbed the place spotless the night before, but still, I found myself polishing counters again, refolding napkins, fussing with the chalkboard menu until my handwriting looked like it belonged in some Parisian side street. In my head, I pictured Mom walking in with her cardigan folded neatly over her purse strap, Dad scanning the ceiling for faults, and George clapping me on the shoulder like he'd built the place himself. I wanted to believe, even though every memory I had warned me not to, that they'd show. They didn't. By 7:05, the first customers weren't family, but strangers. A guy in a postal uniform bought a coffee and 2 scones, complimenting the crust like he actually knew what he was talking about. A young couple came in after, still yawning, holding hands, ordering a box of everything, because it smells like heaven. I kept glancing at the door every time the bell jingled, heart squeezing, but it was never them. Around 10 a.m., I saw Mom's text in the family chat. George's dinner went beautifully last night. So proud of our big man. He's moving up so fast. That was it. No, sorry we missed you. No, how's it going? Just another standing ovation for the golden child. I stared at the message until my phone dimmed, my chest hollow. I almost burned a batch of cinnamon rolls because my hands shook too much dusting the sugar. At noon, the bakery was packed. Line out the door, kids smearing frosting across their faces, neighbors taking photos of the window display like it was some tourist attraction. The journalist from the magazine actually showed up, snapping notes, telling me the editor had pushed the feature earlier because they liked the local boy makes good angle. My face flushed so hot I thought I'd collapse. Strangers were clapping me on the back, saying, "You'll do great here, kid," while the people I wanted most couldn't be bothered to cross the street. Then Dad called. I swear, the man has a radar for ruining my best moments. I stepped outside, apron still dusted with flour, phone pressed to my ear. He didn't ask how the opening went. Instead, he launched straight into a pitch. "Look, James, George has the financial know-how to keep you from, making mistakes. You're good with ovens and sugar, sure, but money is serious. Why not let him oversee things? You focus on baking, he'll make sure the lights stay on." I could hear laughter and clinking glasses in the background, like they were still at George's celebration, like I was just an afterthought. My throat tightened. "Dad," I said, steady as I could, "this isn't a hobby. This is mine. Every cent in here is mine. Every loaf, every croissant, it's me, not George." He sighed, the kind of sigh that carries decades of dismissal. "Don't be stubborn. You'll thank me later." Then he hung up, just like that. I went back inside, and a little girl tugged at my sleeve, holding up a chocolate croissant almost bigger than her face. "Mister," she said, eyes wide, "this is the best thing I ever ate." And I smiled. Really smiled, the first real one all day, because in her voice, I heard what I'd been craving all along, approval. Only it wasn't from blood. It was from someone who saw me, not George's shadow. The first week after opening was a blur of sugar, sweat, and caffeine. By the third day, I was pulling 18-hour shifts, running deliveries in my beat-up hatchback, because some cafes downtown wanted to try me out. It felt insane. Me, the kid whose parents still called baking a phase, suddenly juggling invoices and sticky buns. Customers kept coming back, some even calling ahead to reserve loaves. The racks emptied faster than I could refill them. But while the ovens ran hot, my family went cold. Not a single visit. Not a single text asking how it was going. Mom posted pictures of George's first big regional meeting on Facebook, with hashtags like #ProudMama and #NextBigBoss. Dad called once, just to remind me George had connections that could boost my little shop. He kept calling it a shop, like it was a lemonade stand, not a registered business with actual demand. That Friday night, George himself finally showed up. He didn't come inside. He stood outside the window, tie loosened, scrolling on his phone like he was too important to cross the threshold. I wiped my hands on my apron and went out front. "Hey," I said a little too brightly. "You came." He glanced up, smirk tugging at his mouth. "Busy week. Thought I'd swing by. Congrats on the place." "The bakery," I corrected. "Right. Bakery." He slipped his phone into his pocket. "So listen, Dad's right. You should let me help manage your finances. You're great at baking, Jack, but I can keep this thing afloat. You don't want to end up in debt." The arrogance in his tone lit something in me. "I've been saving for years. I don't need you to rescue me." George chuckled, like I was a kid insisting I could ride a bike without training wheels. "Jackety, you don't know what you don't know. You should be thanking me for offering." I swear, if there hadn't been a customer walking out just then, I might have lost it right there on the sidewalk. Instead, I bit down hard on my tongue until I tasted copper. "I don't need your help." His smile flickered. then hardened. Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you. And with that, he walked away. The next morning, the strangest thing happened. I had a line of customers before I even unlocked the door. Word had spread faster than I could have imagined. People were talking about the bread with the perfect crust and the rolls that melt in your mouth. A restaurant owner placed a standing order for 3 dozen baguettes every morning. A local blogger posted, calling me the hidden gem of Brookway. By the second week, Crumb and Carrie wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. My shelves emptied before noon most days, and I'd started waking up at 2 a.m. just to keep up with demand. The exhaustion was brutal, but it was the kind of tired that felt earned, the kind that hummed in your bones instead of dragging you down. For once, I didn't feel like the family's spare tire. I felt enough. But of course, nothing good in my life has ever stayed untainted by George. It started with a Yelp review. 1 star, no profile picture, posted late at night. Overpriced. Bread stale. Owner rude. I recognized the cadence immediately. George writes emails the same smug way, flat, dismissive, dripping superiority. I brushed it off at first, but by the next day, 3 more popped up, all suspiciously similar, all trashing my bakery. Then I overheard a customer whispering. I read online this guy's bread makes people sick. I hadn't even had time to panic when the health inspector showed up. Clipboard. Cold eyes. Asked about storage practices, checked temperatures, ran his finger along the top shelf for dust. I passed, of course. I run my place tighter than a drum. But still, he made it clear that someone filed an anonymous complaint. I didn't need Sherlock Holmes to figure out who. That night, furious, I called my parents. Mom answered, voice syrupy with wine and pride. Oh, sweetheart, did you hear? George just signed a new contract. He's getting a company car. I cut her off. Mom, did George tell you he's been trying to sabotage my bakery? She laughed, like I'd just told her I suspected George of robbing banks. Jackety, don't be ridiculous. George wouldn't waste his time with pastries. It's not pastries, I snapped, louder than I meant to. It's my life, and he's trying to ruin it because I wouldn't let him control it. Her sigh was long and disappointed. You're being paranoid. George wants the best for you. You should be grateful he cares at all. I stood there in the dark bakery, phone clutched in my fist, shaking. I felt 12 years old again, trying to prove I wasn't making up stories, trying to scream the truth into ears that would never listen. The next day, I doubled down. I expanded the menu, added savory pastries, spinach and feta twists, rosemary focaccia, bacon brioche knots. I posted photos on Instagram, responded personally to every comment, invited people to sample for free on slow afternoons. Word spread even faster. By Friday, Crumb and Carrie was in the Brookway Herald, front page of the lifestyle section, the bakery everyone's talking about. That night, as I locked up, I found a note tucked under the door. No name, just 6 words scrawled in hurried pen. He won't stop until you fall. For the first time, I realized maybe George wasn't just playing games. Maybe he wanted me crushed completely, and he wasn't above going further than bad reviews to do it. I came into the bakery bleary-eyed but running on nerves. The day started fine. Lines as usual, chatter about the Herald article, a little boy telling me my chocolate chip cookies were better than Christmas. For a few hours, it felt normal. And then my card reader froze. I rebooted it twice. Nothing. A customer in line muttered, "Guess this place isn't so professional after all," and walked out. By noon, I realized it wasn't just the reader. My entire business account was locked. Payments, deposits, gone. I called the bank, heart pounding, flour sticking to my sweaty hands. After a long hold, the rep finally told me, "Sir, your financial manager requested a freeze due to suspicious activity." My what? I asked. Your financial manager. George Turner. He's listed on your account. I swear my blood ran cold. My dad must have slipped George onto the paperwork somehow when I'd shown him early drafts for advice months ago. I hadn't even thought to double-check. I'd trusted. By the time I hung up, the ovens were cooling, half the day's bread still unsold because people had no cash, and I had no way to take cards. I locked myself in the back, hands shaking, rage so hot it scared me. George hadn't just left a bad review. He'd cut off the blood flow to my business. That night, I called him, voice raw. "You froze my account." He didn't deny it. "Relax, Jack. I'm protecting you. You don't know what you're doing." The numbers weren't adding up. They were fine. I snapped. I've been profitable since day 3. Listen, he said, tone flat. Dad was right. You're good at kneading dough, not managing money. Let me run the finances, and this won't happen again. You can focus on the baking, where you belong. That word, belong, felt like a blade. Like I was a dog told to stay in its yard. By the 3rd week, sleep was a rumor. Every night, I locked the bakery with one eye on the shadows, wondering if George, or whoever was leaving those notes, was waiting. I was jumpy enough to nearly smack a customer with a tray when they tapped me on the shoulder for directions. The bank account mess dragged on for days. George stonewalled me at every turn, insisting he was protecting my business from mismanagement. The bank wouldn't budge until he signed off, which meant I was stuck taking only cash while half my supplies went unpaid. By Thursday, I had flour dust on my clothes and bruises under my eyes, praying I wouldn't lose everything before I'd even begun. Then the sabotage got physical. It was a Friday, just after dawn, the air still heavy with butter and cinnamon, when I walked into the back room and smelled something sharp. Not food, not cleaning solution, gas. My heart slammed. I raced to the ovens. Sure enough, one of the valves had been twisted open. Not all the way, but enough. If I hadn't come in when I did, if I'd lit the ovens in a rush, I don't even want to think about it. I killed the valve, flung the doors open, and stood there gulping cold air, hands trembling so hard I almost dropped my phone. I didn't call the cops. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew what they'd say. Do you have proof it was your brother? And I didn't. Not yet. In that moment, the bakery bell jingled. It was the silver-haired woman, coat wrapped tight, eyes bright. She walked straight to the counter, pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand, and said, "This will help you see who's poisoning your dough." By the time I looked up, she was gone. I unfolded the paper with shaking fingers. It was a list, dates, times, and transactions, every one tied to my bank account. And at the bottom, one entry circled in red ink. Withdrawal request, $15,000. Initiated by George Turner. Pending. I sat there, staring at the page, my chest hollow. Because this wasn't just sabotage anymore. This was theft. My brother wasn't just trying to humiliate me. He was trying to erase me. I thought about storming into George's office with the paper in hand, slamming it down in front of his smug face, and demanding answers. But something in me hesitated. The silver-haired woman had said, "See who's poisoning your dough." Poison wasn't just about money. It was about reputation. And sure enough, the very next day, the poison went public. Saturday morning, my busiest day. The line snaked out the door, families, regulars, even a food vlogger setting up a camera. The place smelled like heaven. Almond croissants cooling, sourdough bowls cracking as they cooled. I felt almost proud enough to forget the nightmare George had been making of my life. Then a woman in line screamed. She held up a pastry bag I'd packed myself not 10 minutes earlier. Inside one of the cheese twists was a shard of glass, big enough to cut. She was shaking, horrified, telling everyone. "I almost gave this to my son." The room erupted. Voices rose, phones came out. The food vlogger's camera turned from the display case straight to my face. I rushed over, took the bag, and swore up and down that I had no idea how it happened. But panic spread faster than butter on warm bread. A few people left their bags on the counter and stormed out. The woman said she'd be contacting the health department. And then, like he'd been waiting in the wings, George walked in. Perfect timing, hair slick, suit jacket just wrinkled enough to look busy. He looked around at the chaos, shook his head like a disappointed teacher, and said loudly, "This is what happens when you don't let professionals help." The room went dead silent. Every eye swung between him and me. My throat closed. This wasn't bad luck. This was staged. He'd planted the glass, I was sure of it. But how could I prove it? Before I could answer, the bakery bell jingled again. The silver-haired woman stood in the doorway, quiet but unshakable. She crossed the room, lifted her phone, and played a video. On the tiny screen, grainy but clear enough, was George. Late at night, in my bakery, slipping something into a tray of uncooked pastries. Gasps broke out around us. The food vlogger swung his camera back to George, whose face drained of color. That's not me," he stammered. "That's fake." But it was too late. The crowd turned on him instantly. People who'd been ready to demand refunds were now glaring at him like he was a criminal. The woman with the pastry bag shoved it against his chest and spat. "You could have killed my kid." George bolted for the door, but not before I caught his arm. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the little brother begging to be seen. I looked him in the eye and said, voice steady, "Get out. You don't own me, and you never will." He ripped free and fled, jeers chasing him down the street. The bakery went quiet after that, the crowd buzzing with adrenaline, but still here. Customers stayed. People hugged me. The vlogger came up, smiling. "This story's bigger than bread, man. People need to hear it." And for the first time, I believed I could. The fallout was immediate. By Sunday morning, the video of George sneaking into my bakery had gone viral, shared by the food vlogger, reposted by the local magazine, and dissected in the comment sections of every community page in Brookway. Headlines blared, "Local baker sabotaged by his own brother," and "Family feud almost turns fatal." I didn't even have to call my parents. They showed up at the bakery, faces pale, eyes darting like they'd wandered onto a stage they weren't ready for. Mom clutched her purse strap, so tight her knuckles were white. Dad looked like he'd swallowed vinegar. "Jackety," Mom began, her voice high and trembling. We saw the video. It has to be some mistake. George would never." "He did." I cut her off, sharper than I meant to. "You've spent your whole lives looking at him like he's the sun. Well, guess what? The sun scorched me, and I'm done pretending it's just heat." Dad tried to rally, puffing up like always. "Don't talk about your brother that way. He was only trying to help." "Help?" My laugh cracked. "He planted glass in a pastry, Dad. He could have killed a child. That's not help. That's attempted murder." They both flinched at the word, but I didn't soften it. For once, I let it hang there, sour and real. Customers in the bakery were watching, and maybe that embarrassed them, but I didn't care. "You never came to my opening," I went on, voice shaking. "You never asked how the bakery was going. You called it a hobby. And when I finally made something of myself, all you did was try to hand it to George, like I was too small to carry my own dream." Mom's eyes filled, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or just shame from being caught. Dad opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time in my life, my parents had no script, no pat answers. Just silence. And then, almost perfectly timed, the silver-haired woman slipped in. She didn't say a word, just walked past my parents to the counter, placed a steaming cup of coffee money down, and nodded at me. But as she left, she brushed past Mom and murmured, low enough that only I heard, "Some recipes have to burn before the flavor comes through." I swear Mom shivered. I stared at it, throat tight. My whole life I'd been starving for those words, from my parents, from George, from anyone with the Turner name. And now here they were, etched in my palm by something I couldn't explain. That night, I stayed late at the bakery, baking loaves I didn't need, just to hear the crackle of crusts and remind myself I wasn't dreaming. I realized something as I shaped dough in the quiet. I didn't need their applause anymore. My bakery was full. My name was on people's lips, not George's. For the first time, I didn't feel like the youngest. I felt like the only one who had actually grown up. George's collapse came faster than I expected. Monday morning, his company announced he was suspended pending investigation. By Tuesday, he was trending on local news stations, regional director accused of sabotaging Brothers Bakery. Clients pulled out, colleagues unfriended, and suddenly the golden child was covered in rust. My parents tried damage control, of course. Mom called, voice watery, "Jackety, please, don't press charges. George he just lost his way. He's under so much stress." I almost laughed. Stress? I thought of the glass in the pastry, the gas valve in the kitchen. My answer was sharp. He almost destroyed everything I built. He almost hurt people. I'm not protecting him. And I hung up before she could twist my words into guilt. But while George unraveled, something else wove itself tighter around me. The community. People I'd never met before stopped me in the street to thank me for standing up for myself. Customers brought flowers, handwritten notes, even groceries to help me keep going until my bank account was unfrozen. One old man left a 20 on the counter and said, "For the bread that tastes like home." And then there was her, the silver-haired woman. She returned every day that week, always ordering the same thing, black coffee and a roll. She never lingered, never explained. But on Friday, when the bakery was nearly empty, she finally spoke more than a sentence. "You're wondering why I'm here," she said, sipping slowly. I wiped flour from my hands. wary but curious. You've been leaving notes. Saving my ass. Yeah, I'm wondering. She paused at the door. Your family will come back. They always do. The question is, when they do, will you still be waiting for them? And just like that, she was gone again. The day my bank account was finally released felt like shedding chains. I wired payments to my suppliers, balanced the books myself, and saw the truth in black and white. Crumb and Carrie wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. Profitable. Respected. Mine. Word spread beyond Brookway. A cafe 2 towns over wanted weekly shipments. A wedding planner booked me for a 200-guest reception. And when Local Table came back for a follow-up article, they didn't just feature me in the lifestyle section. They put me on the cover. The night after the issue dropped, I found myself sitting at one of my own tables, watching the last customers trickle out. The bakery glowed golden in the evening light, the shelves nearly bare. So when my parents walked in, tentative, uncomfortable, Mom's eyes red-rimmed, Dad's shoulders hunched, I didn't stand up. I didn't rush to greet them like I always used to. I let them come to me. Jackety, Mom whispered, voice trembling. We were wrong. Dad cleared his throat, staring at the floor. We should have believed in you. For a moment, my chest ached with the familiar hunger for their approval. The little boy in me wanted to hear those words, to soak them in like rain after drought. But the man I'd become, the baker, the builder, the dreamer, realized something quietly powerful. I didn't need them anymore. I know, I said simply. But you don't get to walk in here and erase what you did. I built this without you. And I'm proud of that. They nodded, guilt heavy in their eyes. Maybe they meant it. Maybe they just didn't like being the villains of the town's favorite story. It didn't matter. I wasn't waiting for crumbs anymore. That weekend, the bakery held a community event, bread and belonging. Free samples, live music, kids decorating cookies at long tables. Strangers laughed like old friends. People danced between racks of cooling loaves. And for the first time in my life, I felt surrounded by a family I had chosen, one loaf, one smile at a time. As the sun set, I slipped outside for air. The silver-haired woman was there, leaning against the lamppost, her eyes warm. You chose, she said. I did, I replied. And I'd choose it again. She nodded, satisfied. Then you won't need me anymore. Before I could ask what she meant, she was already gone. I turned back toward the bakery, the sound of laughter spilling out, the smell of warm bread drifting into the night. For the first time, I didn't care who wasn't there. Because I had risen, I had endured, I had chosen. I was home.